speaker now. Excuse me. So Sidney, Sid Martin, has his PhD. He's the program director, St. Petersburg College of Engineering. Dr. Martin is a licensed professional engineer with a specialty of manufacturing. He is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt who is driven to improve processes using continuous improvement techniques. He combines these skills with project management, with a PMP, which is a project management professional, project approaches, and common sense improvement methods. Dr. Martin has helped many industries obtain significant margin gain. Educating others using experience and practical knowledge is a strong skill that is available to all organizations. He is a STEM educator. I think that's science, technology, engineering, and math, with a focus on retention of underrepresented minorities in second post-engineering education. So please help me welcome Dr. Sid.
Great to see you all. I'm going to share my screen here. Everyone see my screen? Great, awesome. So it was great to be here and get to listen in this morning, to get to hear about what you're interested in, what types of challenges you're facing, and perhaps we can address some of those issues as we go through. I know it's really tough if you find yourself in a transition state that was unexpected. I've been there myself with no warning, and you always, try to figure out, why was I included? I wasn't expecting this. So yeah, there's always challenges, and I think today's talk I can modify just a little bit to help some of you from what I've heard, but we're going to be talking about the future and where we're headed in 2030 and beyond. And I'll go over why I decided on that topic and is something that I'm interested in. And there are many expected converging technology developments. We're going to talk about that. And it may be helpful to some of you as you're looking for new career areas. There are places for graphic designers, there are places for sociologists, there are places for MBAs, places for engineers, and they may not always be where you thought they were going to be. And so this is going to be a talk where we survey a bunch of different topics, and survey is something we use in higher ed, which means we're not going into any detail or a lot of detail at least, but we're talking about some of these different things at a high level. So we're moving to a point where, many of us have pet dogs, and I have a couple, and, the playmate may actually be a cobot dog coming in the near future. We certainly see these in the news and being demonstrated. And, companies like Boston Scientific are always showing dog-like animal robots and what they can do. So a little bit about me that wasn't in the introduction. I'm responsible for engineering and engineering technology at St. Petersburg College. We are a four-year institution, but for engineering, many of our engineers start here for 2 years and transfer to another institution to finish years 3 and 4. And then we have associate's degrees in engineering, technology, manufacturing, building arts, including architecture. And as I mentioned, we have the transfer students. I am a licensed professional engineer. Been doing that for many years now. My specialty is in manufacturing. There aren't many of us currently who are licensed professional engineers in the manufacturing field, since so many jobs had transferred overseas, but they are coming back. To add new information, I do consider myself an entrepreneur. I've been involved with 2 startups. One was a group of us purchased our company back from General Electric and operated that company for many years before successfully selling it. If you have a smartphone or cell phone or other device like earbuds that are waterproof, there's a good chance that technology that I've developed are in those devices. So there's a company, HCO, which is in North Carolina, which we definitely, that started in a garage and ended up now is one of the Fast 500 growing companies. I've worked in 28 different countries, which is one of the reasons why I recommend engineering to new students. If you have a desire to travel, an engineering degree does offer those types of opportunities. So why did I start talking about the future? And it's mainly because as I was teaching class, I was telling students, you know, in the first, I was basically at the start of CAD engineering and computer graphics. And I would tell students about that. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, they just didn't care anymore. You know, they just can't identify with the time that there aren't computers. And so I started talking about, well, what do you think you'll be doing in 30 years from now? And trying to, instead of talking about what we were doing 30 years ago, or maybe 10 or 20 years ago, let's start talking about the future. So what's not going to make sense in 30 years? You know, you try to describe this common telephone to a student now, and they have no idea. Many of us, you know, were involved with party phones, you know, where others were on the phone line and we were sharing it. And depending on the ring, and that type of technology just isn't discussed anymore. We had this convergence of technologies that started to happen. And if we set politics aside for a minute, there was a lot of advancement that was made in vaccines for COVID-19, and people were saying they were possibly unsafe and not understanding why it didn't take years for development. We had many different techniques and things that were happening in the medical field and in the engineering and science fields that combined together that gave at least an opportunity for a vaccine to be developed fairly fast. So where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years? What's going to be the best way to address these advancements? And do we deny that they're happening, or are we going to embrace them? And I think that we should embrace these changes and try to find out about them and figure out how we can fit in. So let's take a trip forward and look at 2031 and beyond. So what are we going to find when we get there? So it's going to be important to realize that the middle class in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa will outnumber the US and Europe combined. So we're going to see that the middle class is no longer going to be European or US centric. And the global economy will be driven by not the Western consumer. We're going to find more robots than workers, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing, and we'll discuss some of that. There will be more currencies than countries. And for those of you who've looked into blockchain and other currencies, we're going to see more and more of virtual currencies, and we're going to be doing different types of work. And it was exciting to hear as the discussions were happening about those who are thinking about either starting into their own ventures on their own, or at least a part-time venture with maybe part-time work for some other organization, because those opportunities are going to be coming about. And they're going to be more grandparents than grandchildren in some places. So what we need to start considering is to use our imaginations every day and improve our learning habits and take care of our brain. So our brain is going to be one of our biggest assets. What we know, what we have to share, what others may be willing to pay for, even if it's only for a piece of our time, is going to be important. So we may build these assets rather than a specific career. So at least for our children and students who are entering the area, into the work area, they may, rather than develop a career at a company, they may develop their own activities or do some sort of part-time work. And so we have to become more of a Renaissance person and learn beyond the borders that we face every day. So whether it's your own community in the Austin area, which I love Austin. When I was working on my doctorate, I spent time in that area doing some research. It's a beautiful place to visit. It's also beautiful here in Florida. If you're looking for work, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, it's an expensive place to live, but there's lots of work here. You need to be curious and passionate. And I should mention, I do a lot of work with workforce and workforce solutions. The workforce people we're on each other's speed dials, and I visit a lot of companies 2 or 3 sometimes a week, along with our local workforce groups, looking at opportunities that are available for people, and the jobs are there. As was mentioned before, they're not always on job sites, so it is important to do the networking. One of the things that's going to happen to us in the future is we're going to be inundated with advertisements. It's going to be worse than it is now. Advertisements are going to be everywhere. Devices to be able to access internet or whatever is similar to our current internet in the future are going to be given to us for free. And what we're going to do is end up having either to pay for advertising or we pay not to see that advertising. So immersive advertising is something that we're not going to be able to avoid. It's going to be there. We're going to be just part of it. And the only way to get away from it will be some form of payment. Here in Florida, there's a focus on electrification, and truly there's a focus across the country on electric vehicles. And I think we're going to find that there's a high number of opportunities that are going to come about as we transition from the internal combustion engine driven vehicles to an electric vehicle. And once we get to the electrified vehicles, we're going to be getting to the autonomous vehicles, which are going to lead to all kinds of new types of industries. We see some of that now with organizations like Uber and Lyft, because those we can be self-employed, offer the opportunity to use our vehicle. But the change is going to become as we have the autonomous vehicles. We may get to a point where, one, we can't afford our own autonomous vehicle. But if we do, if you think about your vehicle right now, I have one in the parking lot, and 95% of the time, or at least 90, it's sitting around waiting for me. So we don't use our vehicles all the time. And we're going to find when we have the autonomous vehicle available that we'll just have it drop us off and send it off to do work for the day. And it'll go find out how to charge itself and how to earn money. And it may kick us to the side and just tell us, hey, I'm gonna do this gig on my own. I don't need you. I can find someplace else to store myself and charge at night, or I'll just work 24 hours a day, pick you up on occasion. So there are all these new types of issues to be concerned about. So by 2035, we're going to have supposedly no new internal combustion engines and new designs that are being offered. So this will be across the country. So all the major manufacturers are going to stop new designs of internal combustion engine driven cars. So that's going to leave us only with electric vehicles, but may leave us with an awful lot more of choice between level of vehicle that we want to purchase, because there'll be new manufacturers showing up who will have vehicles to offer us. Now, Tesla's currently in the news because they're trying to push, I think, to get money to have their infrastructure set up across the country. And for the first time, I heard this week that they'd be willing to put adapters onto their chargers to let other companies use their systems. They've kind of been standoffish all along and said that they weren't going to let that happen. But I think when there's billions of dollars involved, that people can be swayed to make different decisions. The autonomous vehicles, I mean, already younger people, 16 and 17, are not getting licenses at the same rate that they have in the past, because they can call an Uber and a Lyft and get transported to where they need. So they don't have that same desire that some of us had, for freedom and to get out and be able to go where they wanted, when they want. If they have the funds, they can call a vehicle now. So electrified and autonomous vehicles are definitely coming. And, the challenge is going to be here. I know personally, I'm going to have a hard time jumping into an autonomous vehicle that doesn't have a way to provide braking or steering. These vehicles we're going to jump into, and they're going to be like a portable office. And we can basically dial up what we want to have, whether we want something for having a discussion amongst friends, or if we want something that we can work in as we make that transition to a work area. So we're going to find ourselves in these vehicles and being able to just do what we want to do. But control isn't going to be one. There's even discussions about whether they would need windows, and I'm not getting into something that I can't see out of. But these types of things are being discussed. I happen to be an electrical engineer, but this isn't a self-plug, but I think what's going to happen is electrical engineers are going to be making house calls. As we move to having an electric vehicle in our house, it has to get charged in some way. And we have to make decisions about the types of chargers that we will use and have in the future. So these changes are going to mean, we have to look at the type of service that we have at our house, whether or not we care if it takes 8 hours to charge our vehicle, or if we can do it in 40 minutes to an hour. For most of us, we'll probably get home by 11 o'clock at night, and then probably not be up and out of the house before 6 a.m. So a standard charger and that's available through our normal services in our houses, should be acceptable. But you may find yourself, instead of going to your local person who looks, your mechanic that looks at your internal combustion engine car and tells you whether or not it's a good buy, you may now have to consult an electrical engineer or someone familiar, electrician, prior to buying your vehicle, to make sure that it matches what you have in your house. There are Tesla communities. These are coming up in Southern California, starting here in Florida, probably also starting in some areas in Texas, where these houses will be essentially off the grid and designed to work with the Tesla solar roof panels, which, yes, they're bulletproof. They are designed well, but my understanding is you're basically paying $20,000 above any other cost for a solar roof, just because it's Tesla. And you'll be in that community. They'll have their power panel, and you'll be connected to your neighbors as a community and have your own smart grid that serves that community. You'll be off the grid. There may be a connection, but the goal in the Tesla communities will be not to tie in. Autonomous vehicles we've talked about. The designs are going to be different. All these different opportunities, though, they need project managers. They need people who are familiar with product design. They need people who are sociologists, because all of these technology changes we're talking about are going to have a change on us as individuals and how we live and work together. And how the internals of these have to be taken into account from artists, sociologists, psychologists, engineers. And we're not going to have engineers working solely in groups anymore to try to design these vehicles. There'll be lots of supporting personnel to be involved in design decisions. We may get to the point that you can use the force to call your Uber taxi. So we may just think about needing a taxi, which ties into a cobot that is working with us, or our smartphone or other device. And I mentioned cobots here. So we're going to have cobots as personal assistants, and we're going to not only have robots that are working in manufacturing. I mentioned before about the fact that we're going to see more robots. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking away from our opportunities, but they're actually helping us. So, cobots are going to be on the factory floor, and cobots are going to increasingly be in our homes and be our sidekicks. Now here, there's a skateboard, flying skateboards. I don't think we're going to have flying skateboards too soon. It's a big challenge. Everybody wants to have one, and it's one of the few things from the futuristic movies that we still haven't invented, but we've got all these little things that go out on the water and give us hydrofoil type skiing and things. But cobots are going to be around, and the cobot is going to give us the freedom to be more creative. They're also going to be able to monitor things for us, keep track of things on in the factory, in the production, on the production floor, things that we're responsible for outside of the factory, and inform us when things are starting to go wrong and may need our attention. And our interactions with these robots are going to change. So, we're going to be, there's going to be a robot soon in our lives that's going to enjoy playing with the cat as much as we do. And this is going to be a change for us as emotions and decision capabilities start to show up in the robots that we're working with. And I wish this presentation was in person, because it would be fun to try to demonstrate some of these things and have some interaction with a cobot. When I've talked in person, I've put a couple of devices out there in front of the audience, but it's a little bit hard to do in this format. But it's always fun to get in front of the group and have a little bit of participation with some robots. So where would I start looking for work now? I've talked about electric vehicles, and if there's some activity going on near you in electric vehicles, it's fairly new, and there is a need for people to work and support the new developments. But cybersecurity is an area right now that has high growth. There are, unfortunately, people who have no reason to do anything bad to us that will continually work to prove their technical ability to haunt us. And I was just talking to a group of young students today, or not today, but this week, who are middle to high school students. And there was one there who was looking forward to when he could learn his skills to be a hacker. And his goals was to be malicious and make people miserable. It was the first time I've met anybody who had said that that was their goal. But so there are those people out there who are looking to do things to us personally, as a group, to organizations, and to countries. So we need people who are involved in cyber defense. So cyber activities are becoming weapons, and anyone can end up being our enemy. And firewalls, we can create them, but they may not be strong enough. There's even the last couple of weeks, there's been a commercial come out where a toy starts to ask a young child, "What's your social security number?" And the parent is asked, and then the mother starts to say, and it's like, why are you asking? So our toys are all these things that we're coming up with for home automation are all going to be points that we can have security issues with. So there are jobs in cybersecurity that are being developed. This next gen is going to replace our screens. So many of us have seen Google Glasses and the different types of headsets that are available for gaming and that, but they're changing. And to the point where they're going to do direct writing to our retinas. So, basically you're going to have something that looks like glasses, but the image is being written through your eye. And we're going to see that TVs, iPads, smartphones are going to continue to evolve. And we may have things that are similar to sunglasses that integrate all these technologies into one. There's a lot of new activities going on with thought control, not in controlling our individual thoughts, but our ability to control devices by thinking about them. And there are these little pods that are available that have USBs attached to them that you can basically buy software and plug into and start to write your own control of things that are around you. just by thinking. The cloud, well, the cloud, we talk about the cloud, but it's nothing really that anyone else, someone else's computer that is storing information with us, for us. We'll create clouds within the cloud. Open source software, software that you can develop will keep making things better. There's going to be, people laugh because before I moved into the apartment we're in right now, I had like 4 or 5 computers out at one time with who knows how many screens open at once. And I was always trying to figure out how I could take and better transmit information to others, with the goal being that I think there's going to be people who are willing to stop by and look at something that you have that may interest them, and maybe they talk to you or view what your information is, and maybe it's only for 3 or 4 minutes, and they drop a few electronic coins in, or they put some money into your account just for based on the basis of what your time was valued to them. So it might be only $1 or $2, or my youngest daughter does this type of thing as she's an elite athlete, and people come to her and look for advice, and then on the way out they may drop a couple of dollars or not into her account as they exit. And so she's always had this kind of like small slush fund going. Well, I think that there's opportunities for those of us who come up with, it could be something that's entertaining, and somebody comes and visits something you created and leaves something on the way out. So you may create some software for them or some other solution to a problem they're having, and they leave a couple dollars, or they leave more than a couple of dollars. And so it starts making a good second or primary income for you. And so I think for those of you who are looking to start your own business, that there is this whole aspect of, how do I take the information that I have and put it out there? And we kind of have to think about it differently. Like, yeah, I may have to offer a part of my advice and support for a while, and then it's not going to be until that person comes back at a later time and says, hey, you helped me, and here's $5 or 20 or whatever it is. But if you're doing it part-time and working to develop it, it's an area that I think is worth pursuing. Big data and analytics. This is an area where if you've got skills to be able to look at data and understand it, and you have some programming skills, you can find organizations that will hire you to start looking at big data and how to go through it. Our computers have become fast enough that very large databases can be looked at and analyzed fairly quickly. Misinformation. There is going to be jobs coming about where people are going to be looking for people who can just make sense of whether the information that's coming in is good data, bad data, skeptical data, because what's going to start happening is it used to be that people put valuable information out. Now they may put valuable information out that's to confuse the individual. And it's going to only get worse. So there are opportunities for people who get into this field and start looking at how to go through whether or not what's being presented is real and good. Social connectivity. We had a lot of discussions today about, we should all get together via LinkedIn. There's going to be, all kinds of new social connections being developed. Soon, we're going to get to the point that people are going to have to look up what did it mean to tweet something? What was Instagram? What was Snapchat? Because there's going to be something new that comes along that connects us. We're going to have wearables. There's going to be implantables. We'll be able to share a taste, sensation, or smell with someone else. And it's not going to necessarily be because we smelled it with our nose. It's going to be because it was transmitted to us and we then did sense it, but not in the traditional way. We're going to have more social connectivity than we can deal with. We're going to have platforms for liking and disliking. Surveys, you may fill out a survey just by thinking about the response. And the question may be, are we going to be ready for all this social connectivity or not? And so people have to be prepared for, how are we going to act? How are we going to react? What are the concerns? Surveillance, well, we're going to see surveillance come up in ways we haven't really worried about in the past, and they're going to have to worry about in the future. There's genomic. Scientists are going to start using methods to be able to look for disease and variants, like the change of COVID. It's going into the different variants that are happening. We'll have ways to start picking up on that. Facial recognition, going to be, these surveys that you see of, show your picture of 30 years ago and again today. Well, they're not out there just for the fun aspects. There were people who were trying to gather data to check and make sure that their software was working. So they could do predictive analysis. So we have to really think about our participation and what things are really fun and what are we providing. So there's just all kinds of opportunities in surveillance. Drone technologies. This is an area that I don't think many people realize all the opportunities for work that there's going to be. We think about drones in the air, and yes, they've given us a lot of ability to do things that we don't need helicopters for. Quadcopters are going to be carrying us from place to place, and that's very close to reality in Southern California right now. But being able to operate a drone, essentially a ROV underwater, lots of jobs. If you're close to the water or close to rivers, close to lakes, pipelines. There are a lot of these drones that are now sent through all the different pipelines to do an inspection or for some sort of other monitoring of pipes. So people often talked about doing pipeline inspections, but the reality comes out that these drones are being flown within the pipes. And so there's all kinds of new work that's available there. So they're going to be personal drones. These are being developed. So you have your own essentially drone motorcycle. I guess when I was talking before about things we can do at home, there's also personal factories. And so whether we have 3D printers or machining, these types of opportunities are going to be done at home. One of my daughters is talking about whether or not we should be putting a CNC machine in the, or else an extruder of some sort in the garage, so we can start making money in the garage and making zip ties, things like that. There's always going to be these small products that we could make that fill a need and could be done with the flexibility of technology. The 3D printers that used to cost $40,000 and that to get into are now $500 or less. And you can get a great 3D printer off of Amazon and make some really good products. Maybe not all that fast, but you can make them at home. We're going to be returning to the moon, and there's going to be all kinds of jobs that are set up for relaying satellite network information to and from the moon, setting up a base there. There's look for jobs being developed in that area. DNA, all kinds of jobs in DNA. Looking for computers that are DNA based. We're going to have computers that are more like amoebas rather than silicon chips. And these are in development now. And you may have a fish tank at home that encloses your computer rather than the hard box that you have right now, but it'll work a lot faster. Nanoscale 3D printing. This will be part of customized wearables, be the basic manufacturing method that's used in the future, where we're building these materials molecule by molecule. We've got smart dust coming along. And these are wireless sensors the size of dust. So they can collect data now for stress, acceleration, pressure. The advantage is we can use them for diagnosis of diseases, do wireless monitoring. The disadvantages of it is we can't keep track of it. It goes everywhere. And so someone could come by and the next thing you know, they let go some of the stuff and now you've got it in your home and you don't even realize it. So there are going to be privacy control issues. 4D printing, this is going to be materials that we can, not necessarily that they are, the fourth dimension here is not time, but it's has to do with flexibility of the materials that are used and whether or not we can manipulate them to get where we want them to go. So we could use a magnetic field to move our sensors into places that are extremely tight that we couldn't get to. We're going to have what's called neuromorphic hardware, and there's a fourth class of device that has been developed, which is an MRISTR. It's been around for a while, but we can set up neurobiological architecture of the human brain. And this is going to help us with these cobots and robots we've been talking about. Digital twins are a little bit different, but this is a technology that you could hear about. The data is basically you have a process that occurs in the real world and it's being simulated at the same time. And information from the real world is being fed into your digital computer model. And the information is going back and forth in real time. So you actually simulate events before they happen, but as they're happening, you put in the information that just occurred that keeps improving your model. You're going to have brain-computer interfaces. And we have some of these right now, like cochlear implants, but we're going to have more development of, eyes, limb prosthetics, and we'll also have technology that comes about to help us with our concentration. We're going to be able to develop virtual worlds. So right now, we teach software here in Reddit that, there are different technologies like Autodesk Rivet is what I meant to say, but what it allows us to do is to model systems so that our people who are talking with architects can actually visualize their buildings before they're ever even constructed. so they can visit what their building's going to look like, how it's going to be laid out, where their rooms are. And so there are all kinds of opportunities in computer-aided design. Smart cities, heard of these probably, but that's where we're going to be looking at city design, how we get things for our homes that are automated, how do we control bike sharing, Uber. There's all these need people to manage those activities. Biofactoring, new area coming up. There's going to be a new class, or in a way there kind of is now, but a vegan who eats only meat that was produced without killing. So it's grown. Automobile frames are going to be woven from graphene. Skyscrapers are going to be grown from the rock that is in place. We're going to see that we're going to continue to have buildings that are built. Height's going to be the driver, but sustainability is going to be added in. And for the first time recently, architects are starting to look at adding plants into designs, which is a change because architects typically consider organic matters dangerous to their devices. Medicine is going to become even more personalized. We'll be able to look at, just as we do now, genetic tests for cancers. There'll be less drug companies as we move forward. We've got to watch CRISPR. CRISPR has been around for a long time, but we can edit genes, and underground labs are starting to pop up where things like kidneys and other organs are being developed. And there is a concern about whether our genetic identity can be trusted to confirm who we are, because it can be duplicated in the lab. Artificial tissues are being developed, and we've got a lot that we can do there. Implantables, and I do notice we're coming up on our time there, so I'll be wrapping up soon. Implantables, this is, we may be concerned about this, but there's a lot of things I've talked about today that we should be concerned about, but we could have implantable keys, our bank ID, payment links, health info could all be a part of our bodies. We'll also have things that we could augment. So we could have sonar-like capabilities, or a true compass that always points us north. Hyperloops are coming about, and these are where we're going to travel between places at high rates of speed. Tesla has been working on, at least a part of Tesla has been working on these types of systems. We'll have avatars, and though these have been around, we could actually send our avatar to have an experience, and we wear a haptic suit, and we actually experience and see the same thing that our avatar is seeing. So we could decide that we wanted to visit a country and ship our avatar somewhere in a box. So I think there's these other topics, but are there any questions or thoughts that people have?
I have a question. This is Kathy. Do you know if there's technology on the horizon to deal with the shortage of the essential materials to create batteries? So much of this is going to be, require more efficient battery technology. Yeah,
that's an area of interest for me. I do teach a master's class in advanced electronics, which is focused on electrification of vehicles. And batteries is if I was to start over, I would probably focus more on battery development. It's one of my biggest concerns is the sourcing of those materials is um, we don't have a lot of those materials here in the United States. Just the
Right.
world doesn't have given us that much of a distribution of it. And they exist in places like China. China has the bulk of the material. It's in Africa. And the sourcing of those materials is often done with very young people working in mines who aren't making it beyond early 20s. So I think what we're going to see is right now, lithium is a very good base. There are others that are silicon based that are in development. And I think we'll see that battery technology is going to be changing away from lithium, though lithium's a great source for us. But what people don't realize is that lithium burns in a terrible way when it's exposed to oxygen. And I've managed to cut through a couple of lithium batteries in smartphones during my career, and they are like those butane cigarette lighters. And the problem is they won't stop burning until they self-consume. So it's once you have a lithium fire started, it's very hard to put it out. So
Especially in an airplane.
yeah, but unfortunately, we found that out in a terrible way. So I think that we need safer technology there, and we also need a safer sourcing of those materials. And I think that there are developments in batteries that will help in this area. So there's also advances in electronics that are going to help reduce the amount of power that's required. And so the convergence of those two situations are, really helping us. If you think back, it wasn't that long ago that we had drones or electric motors for RCs and things like that. So that was also partially due to rare earth magnetics, which is another thing we don't have a lot of in the United States. So it gave us stronger batteries, which allowed us to make smaller motors, but we still have some challenges on sourcing those materials. So it's going to be important. If there was a business to start, they're starting in places now, lithium recovery companies, so that we can recover the lithium that we do have instead of throwing it into garbage dumps and places like that, or disposing of them. So we need to conserve the materials that we have found, and there's lots of job opportunities there.
You were talking earlier when you were giving us your background about a company called HZO. Is that what you had said?
Yes.
And it's one of the fastest growing. I tried looking it up on the stock market, and there's a company called Marine Max that has the HZO.
Yeah, that's a different company.
Right.
Yeah. So
do you have are you on the stock market? Because I'd love to know about it.
Yeah. So the HZO company is currently privately held. I am a founder, and I have founder stock. The company has gone through, so it's privately held, and the company's gone through 4 stock raises and fundraising. So my initial activity there has been greatly reduced. So I still have what will be an interesting event that'll happen should they ever become public, but they are not a public company right now. There are investment opportunities if you look at the HZO site and contact them. I do attend meetings there, but the company started in, well, just about 2012, 2013. I was on the Today Show in 2008 and had waterproof Matt Lauer's cell phone, and he threw it in a fish tank, and now Roper called it and sang Under the Sea. And that was the start of a good thing. But the company has grown. It was growing really well, and then COVID hit, and that just, since they were serving the commercial market and people weren't going out and buying new smartphones and things like that, they took a hit, but they're coming back.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sid, I found your presentation fascinating. I'm a big lover of AI, definitely an interest. And all these things, it's incredible because some of us grew up watching Star Trek, and now, shows like Orville with Seth MacFarlane. It talks about all these technologies. So you see them, it's almost like a product advertisement of the technologies. And it's interesting in some of these shows that they talk about the ethical applications of some of these technologies too. So, I mean, I almost think that Seth MacFarlane's working with some of these big companies to kind of get this technology out there so that the public understands it better. Is that kind of your take on this?
Yes, I just put up a slide here. I don't know if you can see it on social engineering.
We see it.
Yeah. So one of my biggest concerns here is there's all this technology that's going to be hitting, and how it's presented to the public, and who's educating the public about concerns. So I think, I'm not a sociologist. I have an interest in sociology though. And I think some of this stuff is happening faster than we can adapt. And that there needs to be those people who have expertise in sociology and psychology that, that have some input into what we're being, helping us to understand. Because I don't think things are always told to us it's manipulated, and we need to know when we're being manipulated and have a better help in understanding what the impact is going to be. When we have electric vehicles, there are going to be new problems that just aren't being talked about, that the average vehicle weighs 10% more than the current vehicles that we have. And we're going to allow trucks now that the maximum weight on the road is 40,000 pounds. And we're changing the laws to allow that to be 44,000 pounds. Well, it sounds just like a small thing, but our infrastructure wasn't designed for that. So that means our bridges are going to wear out faster. Our roads are going to have even more potholes than they do now. When we get into artificial intelligence being in those vehicles, the vehicle may decide not to park, and that it's going to circle a restaurant until the restaurant says, hey, your food's ready, we'll run it out and put it in your vehicle. And it's not going to park somewhere. So it's going to be driving around or occupying some space somewhere. So what changes is that going to be? So
there's also the issue of inequity. Some people are going to be left outside the technology advancements. They're not going to have the education. They're not going to have the money. And so the gap between rich and poor seems as though it's going to grow immeasurably. I also wondered if you have any information about technology for people with disabilities, and specifically I think the character name of LeVar Burton was Geordi on Star Trek, where
Yes.
he had, the glasses that enabled him to see even though he was blind. And I noticed you had one picture with a guy with a prosthetic leg in one of your slides. But in terms of utilizing technology to enable people to function normally in spite of disabilities, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, it's actually an area that I'm very interested in. I've sat on what an organization that's called the Share Foundation for 40 years now. I just happened to be in the lab when the organization was created, that the goal was to enable individuals who could not communicate, they did not have a voice. So people who think of someone with cerebral palsy who may be in a wheelchair and their body is just out of control, but they need ways to interface to the real world. And these people have written music, they've written movies, they send wonderful emails, they go to college, but when you look at them, you would just say, this is not a person who is functioning, but their body is just robbing them of the ability to have the communication that we have daily. So the organization over time, luckily there's been many things that come about, but there are just some insurances or people who are just overlooked in society who are trapped. And that's where the Share Foundation tries to step in and provide basic communication skills. And that's where there is this ability to think and control things is really coming about and starting to help them. The Geordi character is always interesting because I started my doctor's degree twice. I didn't finish it the first time, but the first time was involved in research in how the eyes function, trying to look at the electrical impulses and how they're absorbed by the brain, mainly because my advisor, that was his area of research. So I think that we're definitely going to see some sort of prosthetic eye, and maybe not as far in the future as we think that it is. Hearing is certainly something that we're able to do and connect into the auditory system now. And there'll be all kinds of good things, I think, that are done to help those who are not physically capable right now.
Wow. Sid, just to piggyback on what Kathy was talking about. So what about like implants in the brain for being able to maybe combat Parkinson's or even dementia or Alzheimer's?
Yeah, I've only read about that type of research. I think it's moving forward, but it's always amazing to me that people who have those types of issues, when they're doing something like that their brain is focused on, that those tremors can stop. And so whether it's singing or playing an instrument or something like that, so if we can link to what is that connection, I think there'll be some advances to be made there. I think what we're finding is that what we normally think of as an implant is going to change because researchers are finding less need to make that cut into our bodies. I still think we need to figure out how to map the brain, because I think we have good general ideas, but there's still a lot of research to be done there. So I'm not sure we always know where to make the connection.
Sid, is there? Okay. Yeah, a quick question. With mapping the brain, is there any chance that we could see video of our dreams?
I don't have an informed answer about that, but I bet we could figure that out. Once we start looking at brain waves and start to do the interpretation, what there's all kinds of scary things to think about whether we could start picking up remotely what people are thinking and becoming, having the ability to read minds. But I bet there's somebody who's thinking about that right now.
Sid?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for your presentation. I learned a lot today. And I was wondering, at the beginning of this presentation, you said that the middle class is going to grow in countries that we don't have a huge foothold in. And I was wondering what you think the role of the United States is going to play in the world, in the sense, especially as an educator. Like, what do you think we should be? Do you think education is going to continue forward the way it has? And can you talk a little bit about what you think the future of education in the United States is going to be and what we should be guiding our children to?
Well, I think education is going to change. And we're seeing some of that right now. Education is probably 10 years behind reacting. And I mean, it's not that we don't know that. I made the change from industry to education in 2014. The way that we learn and obtain new information is going to become, much of it is free. There's a lot of Coursera has wonderful courses to learn something fairly quick. LinkedIn has others. Micro credentialing is becoming very important. There was a time when I thought being a licensed engineer, I shouldn't have to have another certification for anything, and I fought it for a long time. And then, I went out and got a couple of credentials, which I know specifically got me opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think we're going to see more and more of higher education geared towards having certificates built into our degrees so that you can get opportunities quicker. One of the hardest things I have right now is if I have a student that comes in and they take, say, intro to electrical, maybe another similar course, and then learn how to program a programmable logic controller, they'll have a job almost immediately. They take 3 courses and get a certification, and Amazon hires them right away at a good salary, at a salary that they don't even want to think about going back to school. And so I think we're going to see more opportunities where we're starting to work with companies now on developing essentially, like an apprenticeship. The apprenticeship that, you typically think of the plumber, the electrician, the construction worker, but now it's going to be an apprenticeship that gives skills that help someone to have a set skills in 18 months to be a programmer, CAD designer, or perform some other skills. So to answer your part about education, I think that education is going to become something that's on demand, offered for a short period of time, and still there'll be a need for higher education, platforms in schools, but we're going to have to adapt to what industry is asking for. Now, the piece about what role the United States is going to have in this. I don't think it'll be a nation building role anymore. We may be more focused on ensuring that I'd like to see us focus on, strange as may sound, on ethically moving forward and making sure that there's more of an ethical advancements being made to everyone having opportunities and things, there's less inequities. And hopefully that is our focus. It's kind of hard to tell what our focus is right now. I think we're trying to figure that out as a country ourselves. And there's probably going to be a lot of arguments for it. And I thank God every day that I am a United States citizen and I was born here, and people can disagree with me and I can disagree with them, and we're allowed to have differing opinions. So if we continue to offer that type of support towards the rest of the world, and I think that that's a good thing for us.